Hi.
See, this is the warm-up.
It's cute when it's someone else.
Yeah, maybe so.
Okay.
I'm saying it's cute because it's not me.
Exactly. Why don't you start? I don't need to clap. Okay. Hi, welcome back to Broken and Brilliant. I'm Carrie O'Toole with Carrie O'Toole Ministries, and I'm joined again today by my co-host, Melinda Cadwallader.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, as you walked in today, we were admiring each other's clothing because it's spring and being so happy that we could choose some lighter weight things.
Yes.
And I noticed your Wonder Woman tattoo on your arm.
Yes.
And when Jenny was here a couple weeks ago, we were talking with her a little bit about names and what they mean, what God says about our names and who he says that we are. And she has some tattoos also and said that sometimes she can interpret what the meaning of that tattoo is. So do you mind sharing a little bit about your tattoo?
No, sure.
What was going on in your life when you did this, and what does she mean to you?
Well, I was a newly single mother. I fled an abusive relationship when my daughter was 1 month old.
Oh, wow.
And I just, there was a woman I was working with who was a single mother, and she was cheering me on, saying, you can do this. I'm doing it. You can do this. And her daughters were a little bit older, but at least I saw it with my own eyes that, yes, it's possible to be on your own raising a child. And, that was so...
How old were you?
24.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had just started out in a beautician career and was making decent money. So it was possible. And so I did. I left. I went back home with my family. They've always been so, come back whenever you need to. And I needed to. And they came and swooped me and my daughter up. And when she was 2, I really started feeling confident in my abilities. I was living on my own. I was raising her without any financial support from her father. He wasn't involved. I was moving ahead in my career. I was taking more classes and my clientele list was growing, and I was just feeling like, okay, I'm making it. I survived the worst, and now we're just going to start, building a life here. And I had always loved Wonder Woman. She was my first...
Since you were like a little girl?
Oh my gosh, she was my first Halloween. We grew up in a very religious church, so Halloween dressing up for that wasn't really allowed. We dressed like Mary, and that's what we could dress up as. Today I'm Ruth. Can't you tell my garb is different this time? But we finally...
My burlap.
Yes, the burlap. The sash is on the left today. So my parents had let us dress up, and I think I was in kindergarten, and it was one of those underoos outfits where I put tights underneath it and put on a mask, and voila, that's all it took.
Right.
And I was transported as Wonder Woman.
And now you're not allowed to wear masks anyway, but that was when we had the little slits, and you had to really be careful where you walked, or you'd fall off the curb.
And after, the gathering of candy, the parents were searching for razor blades. That's what it was back then.
Exactly.
So that was my very first introduction to Wonder Woman. And what really caught me at 6 years old was her stance. She was a woman who stood up and had her hands on her hips. And I was like, wow, there's something valiant about that.
Yeah.
Right. So when I was 7 and 8, I used to sit in my rocking chair and watch her show on TV and with Linda Carter. And
I remember.
It's just amazing. I was so enthralled with her, like this woman who fights for justice. And
well, she could do the things that the men did.
Yeah.
I mean, she wasn't masculine.
Right. No,
she wasn't
beautiful.
manly.
Yeah.
She was very feminine. But she wasn't the one needing rescuing all the time.
Right.
She actually was a very strong woman and could do these. When you're little girls, sometimes you watch TV and there's so few role models.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with being a wife and a mom. Right. I absolutely love that. That's my primary role.
Yeah.
But I'm not a victim.
Right.
And I'm not a weak person.
Right.
And I don't think that God called me to be, back in the shadows.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. And I absolutely resonate with that because the two shows that were on around the same time were the Dukes of Hazzard and Wonder Woman. And in our home, we watched those. And even Dukes of the Hazzard, like Daisy Duke was beautiful and she was always kind of flitting about. But
she was ditzy
she wasn't
as
the
could
one.
be.
She wasn't like
she was
Wonder
dumb.
Woman who was like helping and saving people and empowering people. And so I just started following her and collecting memorabilia and collecting her comic books and, you know, just having fun with it. But it wasn't until I was 24 when I really realized that I'm feeling confident as a single mother. I didn't have a man in my life and I didn't really feel like I needed one. And I was really thankful for God for him protecting me throughout this whole pregnancy and, you know, up to this point. And I figured I would commemorate it and have a reminder. And at 24, you know, the lifestyle and culture I was in, those weren't, you know, sticky notes, posters, or a plaque on my wall. It was a tattoo. And that to me was like the greatest symbol of that. So I got a Wonder Woman tattoo and got a lot of flack for it from a lot of different people. But, you know, it was a reminder to me. It was a reminder to me to sit up tall and be confident in your abilities and know that you're here for a purpose and that you know, someone you're protecting and loving someone and you are caring for them like no one else can. Like that's what she instilled in me. And that's something where I never fell into that I'm a single mother victim. Mm-hmm. You know, I did try to get child support, but it wasn't happening. So I didn't rely on it. And when it came, it was a blessing. It wasn't a life source for me. I just continued on doing where the Lord was leading me, you know, just taking each step as I could.
Right.
Yeah.
And you didn't turn into a harsh, bitter
man-hater. No.
We don't need those men. No. How did you?
I always remained hopeful. And I think that, you know, I had a lot of girlfriends who were single and in the salon, like there's a breakup once a week and we're all helping her. We're all coming alongside her. And so it's a really fine line because you can fall into that.
Can be your own little soap opera.
Critical, well, just being like, oh, you hurt her. All men are like that. And, you know, there's a bond of sisterhood where we can all relate to a broken heart. And so sometimes when we rally around that, it
can turn negative.
It can. So,
and how did you prevent that?
You know,
or did you go there sometimes?
I did go there sometimes, but I don't know. I think that's just the grace of God, just protecting my heart because I always remained hopeful of a Cinderella story. Like, you know, I know that right now there's no one and, you know, I did get my heart broken several times in bad relationships, but I was hopeful. I remained hopeful. I never lost hope. And I think because of that, I did end up, you know, handing that part of my life over to the Lord. Right. And he was like, thank you. Thank you for finally relinquishing that to me because let me show you what I can do. And he did show me through him a new love, a real love, and what a relationship should be and how love fulfills each other. And when he showed me that with him, I had a standard. I had something that I was able to now I think I'm ready to date again. But now that I know what real love is, I'm not going to settle for less. I'm not going to seek less. You started learning
what healthy and secure relationships look like.
Yes.
Rather than anxious or avoidant or chaotic or all those other things.
Well, and when I put everything in my life on the Lord, I didn't need a man for anything. I didn't need his financial support. I didn't need his love to make me feel whole. Mm-hmm. So when I met Mike, I was in a very confident time of my life. I was doing amazing things in my career. It was really moving into new areas. My daughter was thriving in school. Our relationship was so close that he came in as like this amazing friend and companion. He wasn't filling a hole in my heart.
He wasn't desperately needed.
No.
To the point where you're, oh, save me.
Yes.
Because you were already saved. You were already whole.
Yeah.
So when he came in, he didn't feel the pressure to rescue you.
Right.
You were already rescued.
Right. And that made the hugest difference in our relationship because our time together was just him and I getting to know each other, talking about the Lord, talking about what we're doing in our life. And that became our conversations were like what grew into a deeper love, but it wasn't out of a need.
Right.
So that's what she is to me. She's that reminder of, you know, I'm whole and I'm complete and I can do great things.
You know, growing up, I remember the people who had tattoos were mainly bikers or guys who were in the army or something like that. There weren't too many women who had tattoos. And then especially, there was a time in the church that we happened to be in at the time, tattoos were like, no way.
No way, yeah.
No way. And I mean, I always remember thinking, well, I would never do it, and I would not want my kids to do it.
Right.
But then, as life progresses and you deal with your own hardships and you become less and less judgmental of other people, I start wondering, what's the story behind it?
Right.
Because, I have heard that they're painful. It's not something that's just a fun little thing to do. I mean, you suffer to get that.
It's not temporary.
No, and it's permanent. So a lot of thought goes into the meaning of this tattoo.
Yeah.
It's going to be with you the rest of your life.
Yes.
And when I was in grad school, I was at Colorado Christian University for a semester, and I can't remember what the class was, but we had a topic one time in a group discussion with about 40 people in this class, and the whole idea was the culture of tattoos. And getting to see this room full of people talk this through, some of them were like, oh, it's sin, don't defile your body, this whole thing. Yeah. And then others were kind of telling somebody that they knew that had one and what the story behind it was. Right. And then some of them, it's like, okay, how many of you have them? And you could see the hands kind of. But a third of the people had tattoos, and they were telling their stories. And it was like, wow. Yeah. There is something here, I still don't think I'm ever going to get one, and that's fine, but I understand it a lot more. Right. And it's not like some weird, lots of people have them.
Well, I was even encouraged to put on a sweater when I went to church, and those little words and conversations are what heap shame on you.
Could you cover up Wonder Woman, please?
Totally. Like that, it made me feel like I was unclean to be in church. And if I was going to be in church, I better cover up because, that was my past. And we don't want to show people what our past is. But what I've realized is that, the whole journey of faith is releasing shame and releasing shame and releasing shame over and over again so that we can live free and just be whole. And what I've come to find out is that it's never about what culture you were in or season you're in. It's really about your heart. I mean, because even now, I'm getting another tattoo next weekend. But my heart is for the Lord. My heart is like, I'm doing this in honor of you, and it means something.
What are you going to get? Can you share it?
So
you brought it up.
So Jen and I have been talking about this for a long time. There's a saying, it's para tus podas, and it means at the feet. And it relates to the story of when Jesus was in Mary and Martha's house, and Martha's cooking and, getting all these things ready, and Mary's sitting at Jesus' feet. And during that time, women weren't allowed to be disciples. Women were in the kitchen. So the fact that Mary was even sitting there at his feet, that was something in her that was like, yes, me too. I want to learn of you. I want to be discipled by you. I want to do great things for you. And when Martha said, Jesus, can you tell her to come up and help me? And he's like, Mary's chosen what is more important to her, and I will not be taken away from her. And Jen and I are very passionate about that, about being a woman and being a disciple and being a prophet and being whatever the Lord calls you to, that it will not be taken away from you. And so we're getting that tattooed with an arrow on our left forearm together as kind of like our friendship
point to.
I'm not sure. We'll have to ask Jen about that. Okay. I know that there's something. For me, I love arrows, and it's just kind of what I like right now. But of course, she knows why I like them, so she could tell us. Right. But that's the difference. I think there was a man that came to our church about 2 years ago, and he was the one who Jen trained under for tattoo prophecies. Right. And he asked anyone there, the place was full. There was about 800 people there, and he asked anyone if he could read someone's tattoo, and I raised my hand, and he chose me, and I went up on stage, and he read my mail. He took every tattoo, and he told me something about my past and my life and my future that was so okay, yep, that's it. And he talked about her being what I'm stepping into and coming into myself and who God has called me to be. And from that day forward, I never wore a sweater in church again. I was like, the Lord told me who I am. I'm not covering anything up that's going to hide who I am or who I've been, because who I've been is a story also of grace and redemption, and I'm not going to hide that either.
Right.
And so I've never wore a sweater again. And not only did that sweater come off, but any shame or feeling disqualified from leadership or uninvited from ministry, any thoughts about that or any doubt or fear of who I was really called to be just came off. And that's what I want for other women too.
There may be people watching who are thinking, okay, so some guy read your tattoo. It kind of sounds like, I don't know, fortune telling or something like that. How is it not that?
Well, it's almost like, can you describe when the Lord comes over you or when you feel his presence? How do you describe that? And many people say, well, I just know. Because when you hear the Father's voice, his sheep know his voice, and it's like that. It was definitely when he talked about my butterfly, he said, you've had a big transformation in your life, because butterflies are a symbol of transformation. And well, yes, I have. And that's not why I got the tattoo, but it definitely today, it talks about I have a big transformation story, and just the same as in Wonder Woman. One of the biggest about this, about words that damage you and the words that you've been called that sometimes you cling to and they're a lie about you.
Yes.
One of those words was, in a point where I really felt like I was being led by the Lord and I was in my calling and I was coming alive and just stepping into this new area. But the words that were spoken over me were Lone Ranger. And this is from women in ministry. It was painful. It was such this deep wound of, someone that you see as an ambassador of God because they're in this, paid role of
it's their
church
position,
leadership,
their authority.
that you really take those words as like the words of the Lord. It's hard. It's really hard to, you see a pastor and he says a word over you and you're like, oh, that was such from the Lord. That's awesome. And but when they say something negative.
And how did you interpret Lone Ranger?
Well, it wasn't meant as a positive thing. It was kind of
it wasn't the hero.
It was a response. It was a response of disappointment to something I had done. So it wasn't meant to be encouraging. It was meant to say, you messed up. Don't be this anymore. And the word was Lone Ranger. And that just sent me into a kind of a year of depression and withdrawing. We left our church community. We tried to fight for unity and tried to have continued communication about it. And, if only one side's fighting, it's not really an engagement. So we kind of stepped back then and said, all right, we have no place here. And that was a year of a dark place, just a depression and wrestling with the Lord. Like, how can you let people say these things? And how did you say this? And searching my heart with him and saying,
is there something
to it? Right. Because it was so clinging to me. And really what he revealed to me was, that those words had been spoken over me in my life since I was a young girl, just rejection and feeling like you've messed up and make sure that you don't ever do these things again.
No one's going to want to be around you.
Right. So the word lone is lonely. And that's, for women, that's a very uncomfortable thing to be told that lonely feeling for women is just emotionally destructive. A ranger is kind of this negative connotation of, some sort of a sheriff or something that you're coming in here trying to bring whatever.
Not to protect, but to discipline.
Yeah, to discipline. So he broke that for me. It took a long time, but he broke that for me. And one of the ways he broke that for me was when Jen revealed what the meaning of Wonder Woman was for me. I mean, the only thing that the man had said who came to prophesy, he said that this is just, you're stepping into something that's very heroic, because she's a superhero. But what Jen revealed to me was the word Wonder Woman. Woman, in the root of it, is connector.
Right.
There's nothing lonely about the word connector.
It's all about relationships.
It's all about relationship. And wonder is amazement and beauty and all of these things that are wonderful. So a wonderful connector is the exact opposite of a lone ranger. And and when we had this conversation, I think on Facebook between you and I, and talking about words that had claimed us, that we were breaking off, and you had said yours was stupid.
Yes.
And the Lord replaced that with brilliant. And I remember
which
thinking,
is the exact opposite.
Exact opposite. And that was the moment, though, that I thought, wow, I wonder what the exact opposite of Lone Ranger is. And Jen spoke into my life that day and said, what do you mean you wonder? You got a tattoo of it years before those words were spoken over you.
Wow.
You were supposed to look down and be reminded of who you are when those words were spoken to you a year ago. And it just washed over me of just this relief and this, yes, you're right. And that's life. That's speaking life into someone. That's ministry.
Absolutely.
And that's what she did that day. And again, another layer of shame just broken off. And now, I'm writing about the connection between Wonder Woman and women and how God has called us to great,
and you know what?
Great things.
We're going to be done here in just a minute. Let's come back and let's talk more about that. I think that would be great.
Yes.
I have one quick little, my little tattoo story.
Yes.
So
you have a little tattoo?
I do. Well,
you do?
Well, I have to tell you. So I went to Florida a few years ago when I was just hurting. Life was hard. I just needed a break. So I went to Florida by myself for a week. And I remember...
That sounds fabulous, by the way.
Well, it was funny because my kids were telling their friends at school, they were in high school at the time, and I went to pick them up one time, and one of my daughter's friends said, oh, that just sounds so sad that you're going to Florida all by yourself. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I'll be really sad the whole time.
Wait till you're a wife and a mother.
Exactly.
Then you'll be like, oh, man.
So they were doing these henna tattoos at the pool one day, and I decided to get this dragon right across my lower back. And so I had them do a dragon, and I decided I was not going to tell the kids. I didn't know if it would even make it home, but I thought it would be fun. So I did this, and I came home, and my daughter, Katie, and I, when we're watching TV or a movie or whatever, sometimes we'll tickle each other's backs.
Yeah.
So I didn't tell them deliberately about the tattoo. And it was 4 or 5 days after I'd been home, and we were watching TV one night. Mom, would you tickle my back? Sure. So I tickled her back, and then she said, I said, hey, let's switch.
Yeah.
She pulls my shirt up just a little bit and she goes, did you get a tattoo? And they both went back to school and told all their friends I had a tattoo. And it was kind of cruel on my part because I didn't tell them right away. But then a few days later it started flecking off and I'm like, Mom.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So I'd love to know what the meaning of a fake dragon tattoo means.
Serious? No, I have a small dragon on my back. And Jen has something to say about that. So you need to
I'll have to ask her. I'll have to ask her. Well, let's come back.
And then what does it mean that it was temporary?
Oh, and that I'm too scared to do it permanently. There's something there.
No, you're not scared. It's just not your thing.
It's not my thing.
It's totally okay.
Anybody's welcome here. Tattoos, non-tattoos, piercings, no piercings, fake hair, real hair, whatever. We're all welcome here.
Tattooed eyebrows.
There you go. You go.
It's all good. It's good stuff.
Well, thank you, Melinda. And I'm looking forward to doing it again. And we'll see you next time here on Broken and Brilliant.